Your future isn't random. It's being shaped right now by what you're sowing today. If life feels confusing or out of control, it's not because God is rolling a dice with your destiny. In this video, I'm going to unpack the law of sowing and reaping and show you how your daily habits are seeds in your life. But what you probably didn't expect is how the smallest, no big deal seeds end up producing the loudest consequences. In my previous videos, I've been talking about spiritual principles because spiritual principles are what actually govern our lives. And as believers, it's our job to uncover these principles. In the Bible, in Proverbs 25, verse 2, it says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter." God doesn't hide truth to keep you stuck. He hides it so you will seek it and grow. He actually wants you to understand his kingdom. In the Bible, in Luke 12, verse 32, it says, "Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." So when you start learning spiritual principles, your life gets more fruitful on purpose, not by accident. And one of the foundational principles in these is the law of sowing and reaping. We see it throughout all scripture. What you sow is what you reap. In the Bible, in Galatians 6, verse 7, it says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. But whatever a man sows, that he will also reap." That is both a warning and a promise at the same time, because it means that what you're doing today is producing something tomorrow. So, what does it actually mean to sow and reap? Think about farming. If you plant an apple seed, you don't get oranges, and you also don't get apples tomorrow. There is a lag between what you sow and what you reap. There is a growing season. There's a time it takes to incubate or mature that fruit. And this way, people mess up. They plant the seed and then they doubt. And they dig the seed back up just to check if it's working or not. They say, "Oh, am I doing this correctly?" Or that, "Am I watering this enough?" Or, "Is this even growing?" And they start doubting the process. And because they keep digging up the seed, they never allow the seed to become a full harvest. So if you're sowing something good in your life, you have to learn patience in the growing season. Don't quit early. Don't panic early. Don't dig it up. A lot of doubt is actually a knowledge problem. If it's your first time gardening, you're going to second guess everything. You're going to doubt if that what you're doing is proper or not. But if you learn how the process works, you relax, you stay calm because you know the method is right. That's why scripture connects outcomes to understanding. In the Bible, in Hosea 4, verse 6, it says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." When you don't understand what to do, you get unstable. You start doubting yourself. But when you understand the process, you stay consistent enough to see the results come to fruition. Sowing and reaping touches almost everything in our lives. If you sow into your walk with God, such as prayer, the word, seeking Him, you will reap a harvest later. It may not be next week, but in due time, the fruit will show up. Same thing in your physical health. If you consistently sow good food, training, and discipline, in a couple of months you start to see harvest. Another example is in our relationships. If you sow kindness, patience, and peace, you will reap a healthier relationship. But if you sow bitterness and constant arguing, you'll reap distance and tension. So my question here for you is, what are you sowing right now? Not just the big ideas such as, "Oh, in general, my health," or just in general, your finances. I mean your daily habits, your daily disciplines, your daily inputs. Because your daily habits are the seeds that plant into your life. If this video is blessing you, subscribe to this channel to stay up to date when I post more spiritual Christian content like this. Next, let's talk about consistency. It's just not about sowing the right thing that's important. It's about sowing it consistently. If you plant a seed but water it once a week, you can't be shocked when the plant is weak. Consistency is what matures the harvest. And the Bible even points to nature to teach this concept. In Proverbs 6, verse 6, it says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise." In verse 8, it says, "Provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest." Even an ant understands timing. Work now and gather later. And here's another part that people miss: the little things count. You can be sowing big in one area, but sowing foolishly in another area, and you will reap both outcomes. Scripture is very direct about how small compromises stack up in our life. In Proverbs 6, verse 10 to 11, it says, "A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need will hit you suddenly like an armpit. That's what happens with small seeds. They don't look dangerous today, but then one day it hits you. Not because it magically appeared overnight, but because it quietly grew while you ignored it. Think about weeds in a yard. When weeds first pop up, it's easy to pull them out. But if you ignore them, they multiply. Day by day, it grows slowly. But the moment you finally notice it, it feels sudden, like, oh, how did it get this bad? That's how negative harvests work. They grow gradually, but the realization hits you all at once. That's why the story of the prodigal son is so sobering. He didn't wake up on day one and think, oh, I've ruined my life. But eventually, reality caught up, and he came to a moment of clarity. In Luke 15, verse 17, it says, "But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger?'" That phrase is powerful. He came to himself, meaning that he finally got understanding, that he finally got clarity. So even in your own life, you need an understanding heart. You might see one area of your life very clearly, like, oh, I need to fix my health. But you might be blind in another area, like time, finances, character, discipline, or even your relationships. And so ask God for awareness. Ask Him to show you what you're sowing in your life, especially the small things you've been calling as no big deal. Because sowing is always working, even when you're not thinking about it. A lot of people hear sowing and reaping and they get scared. And honestly, it's usually because they know they've been sowing carelessly, or they know they've been sowing the wrong things. But once you truly understand this principle, you should become confident, not fearful, because it means your future isn't random. Your future isn't out of your control. Your future is largely shaped by what you sow today. You control what you sow, and because of that, you have real influence over what you reap. So make a decision today, not just motivation, but a real decision. Be mindful of what you sow into your life, your time, your attention, your money, your habits, your spiritual life. And I'm telling you, what you sow today will definitely show up later in your life. So to recap, sowing and reaping is a spiritual law that affects every area of your life. There's a growing season, so don't quit early or dig up your seed with doubt. Consistency matters, and even the little things are real seeds that produce real outcomes. So how do you practically apply this in your life? Pick one area of life that you want to harvest in. Whether it's your spiritual life, your health, your finances, just pick one area. Identify the seed that you can plant daily, that if you do consistently, that will change your entire life in that particular area. Commit to a simple time frame. Give it a couple of months before you judge the results. And pray for clarity. Ask God to show you what you're sowing and what you've been blind to in your life. If you want more teachings like this, that is practical, biblical, and supernatural, subscribe to this channel. And drop a comment down below. What are you sowing into your life right now? And what harvest are you believing God for? Thank you guys, and see you guys next time.